Hey review family, keep it tight. My name is Jay Morris, reviewing music for the love of music, and welcome back to the metal Tempest. And in this video I'm going to be covering the new Avalanche Effect record entitled Katharsis. And here for a completely left field discovery on my end that is easily leading to be one of the most satisfying and fun metalcore records that I've heard this entire year. So this is a new record from a German metalcore and alternative metal band, but pigeonholing them into one thing is like impossible because they showcase an eclectic mixture of alternative metal, metalcore, post-hardcore, and specifically electronics and trance. And throw some djent in there too, because it sounds like if djent was mixed with like 2000s Electronicore and some of the metalcore and post-hardcore of the 2000s. Mix up the formulaic melodicism and harmonious nature of Periphery, throw in the trance-like breakdowns and trance inclusions of I See Stars, the metalcore stylings of an August Burns Red or an All That Remains, put in some 2010s djent, and you're getting pretty close to the overall formula that they're toying around with here. Immediately on this record, one thing that I found is it's effectively predictable is the way that I'm going to phrase it. It touches upon all of the greatest hallmarks of various shades of metalcore, but scratches that itch in a way that doesn't feel necessarily so derivative that it is unenjoyable, and more so it somehow works in its favor because it's like its own hype beast that gets you excited for things that you know are coming, but you just know they're going to hit like a ton of bricks, and most of the time the payoff is very strong. Tracks like Strife, Shimmer, and Braindance have some of the most ear-infecting choruses and refrains and clean vocals I have heard this year on a metalcore project, or even a single for that matter. Even if you think they are playing it a bit safe and by the numbers, it's hard not to just get so invested with how they songwrite. Not to mention how destructive these djent breakdowns are as is. It is one of the simpler tracks, and I found myself a little lost in how simplistic it was, but damn if this just breakdown isn't so effective. I also have to commend the wonderful usage of electronics to make this track listing feel more fleshed out, more realistic, and just a little more intriguing, because I know for a fact that if these synths weren't across this record and these trance elements weren't across this record, it wouldn't have been nearly as interesting as it is, because I think if you strip that major component to their sound away, it turns into just a very generic metalcore record. And even though it's easy to rag on bands like I See Stars and Electronicore bands, I think that this track listing is more in line with, say, what I Prevail is doing nowadays, where you start to kind of get an idea of the pattern they're going for, which is start a track with the synths and then blur them in as it progresses. Usually their breakdowns, usually their choruses aren't as dominated by electronics, and they're more so an introduction to each track that builds the atmosphere, builds the tension, and if you hear those synths across the rest of a track, it's usually used as more of an accompaniment and not just a grossly overused component like a lot of 2000s Electronicore bands did, which is one of the reasons that in the late 2000s and early 2010s it died, is the overusage of it. And it makes rather normal day at the fair metalcore tracks hit a lot harder. I also have to say that this album had a surprising amount of dynamics coming out of the vocal department. Everything from these really melodic death metal-esque mids to these deathcore and black metal-esque shrieks, as well as soaring clean vocals and lows that when they're layered are just right up there with some of the best vocalists right now. Yeah, it's pretty crisp, it's pretty beefed up, and when you combine it with the fact that the production layers them in a very satisfying way, it can't hurt. But I'm on to you, Avalanche Effect. I see the pattern you're going for. Like, one thing you'll notice is they love to start these tracks with electronics. This record also features some surprising vocalists: Rory of Dayseeker, which I've really been bopping some Dayseeker recently, Mirza of Siamese, and Tobias of Novelist. They're understated but solid. They maybe don't have like the strongest performances as they may have on their initial material that they come from, and I'd say that Rory is probably my favorite. His presence is a little understated for my liking, but I think he's still pretty solid. And I guess probably two of my main complaints complaints with this record is, number one, it can feel a little bloated, like they could have cut the fluff, and it is made even worse when you consider the fact that many of their themes tend to overlap with one another. Most of these tracks can be boiled down to inner self, fighting your inner demons, your inner struggle, a search for salvation of the soul and the heart and the mind. And while those are perfectly fine, especially when they're performed so tightly and efficiently, when it's on pretty much every track, and this track listing is almost an hour's worth of material, I can understand why people might think it could have been cut a little bit, and I would agree. But I'm a big fan of this record, and I know it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I really appreciate it for its eclectic mixture of a lot of different shades of metalcore music, and I'm liking what I am hearing. I do feel a lot more positively than I do negatively about this record, and the only things I could maybe say is sometimes they could cut the fluff a little bit, cut out the middleman a tad, as well as maybe mix up their style so it's not just blurring together a little bit, and expand their lyrical repertoire to not sort of dance around similar topics on top of each other. But when it comes to the composition of these tracks, I really do love what I'm hearing. I like the inclusion of electronics and synths, and considering that all of these shades of metalcore are shades that I've really enjoyed and shaped a lot of my music listening experience when I was really getting into metal, I appreciate what this band is doing and the risks they are taking to blur the lines between all of these genres. And while some people are going to call it corny, I like it. Overall, though, I'm going to be giving this album a 7 out of 10, and that is a wrap. And also, before I go, can we just say, probably one of the coolest album arts of the year? Can we just say that for a second? Have you heard this new Avalanche Effect record, Katharsis? If you have, let me know in the comment section below what you thought about it. I would love to discuss this record with you. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.